Alright, so today I want to introduce you to the Cinnamon Oreo Blizzard Ball Python. It's a pretty interesting combination of genes. It actually consists of 4 genes: the cinnamon, the pastel, the yellow belly, and the calico. Essentially what it is, it's a pewter with the combination of the cinnamon and the pastel with the addition of the yellow belly and the calico. And usually when you make a pewter, it can be really visually dominant, meaning if you actually try to work other genes into a pewter, a lot of times you can actually see a really strong effect from the color and the pattern of the pewter. And for some reason when you work in the yellow belly and the calico in combination into the pewter, it really explodes the pattern to where the visual appearance almost looks like you blended up some Oreo cookies with some ice cream and rolled it into a ball python. It has an interesting appearance. So today I want to jump over the internet and I want to show you how to make a cinnamon Oreo Blizzard ball python. Alright, so I'm going to jump over here on Morphmarket.com and I want to start with this snake right here. This is the Cinnamon Oreo Blizzard Ball Python. Pretty amazing combination. And these can really vary from one example to the other. As a matter of fact, there's not a whole lot of them over here on Morphmarket. It's a pretty rare combination. And if you actually look at this one, it actually has little tiny spots here and there, almost like little pieces of Oreo cookies kind of floating around in the ice cream here, which is kind of interesting that they actually named it this. And essentially what this is, it's almost like a genetic paradox where you actually have, sometimes you have really big splotches on here, sometimes you don't have any at all, and it can really vary from one to the other. The other thing that can really vary is the color of the snake. Sometimes it can be more of a reddish brown, and sometimes it can be a darker color like this. I think it really comes down to the version of the cinnamon that you use to produce this combination. So I actually wanted to show you all the individual genes and how they come together to form this. It's pretty unexpected how you can actually make a snake that looks like this. And the first one I want to start with is the cinnamon. The cinnamon is actually considered to be a dark gene. It's actually really similar to black pastel. As a matter of fact, a lot of cinnamons look really close to black pastels, and they're actually allelic. So you can actually take a cinnamon, breed it to a black pastel, and you'll get a super that looks like the super cinnamon and the super black pastel. I say usually the super black pastel is a little bit darker, and the black pastel can have a little bit more of a reddish brown color in a lot of your combinations, although I have seen some overlap between cinnamons and black pastels. And cinnamons can really vary from one to the other, and I think pretty much anything you mix with cinnamon can really vary just because the cinnamon can vary a lot. So this is kind of like your reddish brown version of cinnamon. I've actually seen some cinnamons that are a lot more red than this, kind of a rusty colored red as far as the cinnamons. Here's another cinnamon. Take a look at this. Some cinnamons are like a dark normal. It's hard to believe that you can have so many different versions of cinnamon. I could probably line up 10 cinnamons and they would all look slightly different from one to the other. It's really variable. And if you actually take cinnamon and work it in with pastel, you make the pewter. And this is what a pastel looks like. And most people, when they think of pastel, they're thinking of a yellow snake. And the pastels can really vary too. Sometimes the pastels can be a really bright yellow, and sometimes the pastels can be kind of a rusty reddish brown color too. So here's what happens if you actually take the pastel and work it in with the cinnamon, you get the pewter. And let me tell you, the pewters can really vary from one to the other. It's probably one of the most variable combinations in all the ball pythons. I think it comes down to the variability of the cinnamon. I think cinnamon is probably one of the most variable genes too. And this is kind of like the reddish brown version of the pewter. And sometimes you can actually get pewters that look like this. Take a look at this. You can get some that look almost silver, almost metallic looking pewters, and they have the same exact genes in them, just a combination of the cinnamon and the pastel. And usually the pewters are really visually dominant, but there's 2 genes that can disrupt the pattern on the pewter, and one of them is the yellow belly. And this is what a yellow belly looks like. And I'd say when it comes to yellow bellies, most people are scratching their head thinking, hey, I have a normal ball python. Could it be a yellow belly? Because the yellow bellies look really close to normals, just the classic wild type ball python. And sometimes you can actually pick out some markers on the yellow yellow belly. Sometimes you'll have strong flaming coming up between the alien heads, and you really can't see any flaming on this one. Sometimes they'll actually have kind of a lighter head. You can see a little bit lighter head, but I've actually seen some normals with this much flaming and this kind of a light color on the head. And one sure sign that you actually have a yellow belly is you can actually flip them over and look at the belly of the snake. And with a keen eye, you can actually pick out some markers. Usually with the yellow belly, you kind of have, it almost looks, I'd say, similar to het pied markers with lines on either side of the belly, except it's really broken up and pixelated. It's really like a granulated het pied marker on either side of the snake. And kind of the confusing thing about yellow bellies is there's other genes in the yellow belly complex that look really similar as base genes. You'll actually have the gravel and the asphalt in there with the yellow belly, and you flip them all over, and a lot of times you'll see this is either a yellow belly or a gravel, or a yellow belly or an asphalt, and they look pretty much exactly the same. It can get a little bit confusing. So here's what happens if you take the yellow belly and work it in with the pewter. Take a look at this. In most cases, the yellow belly actually disrupts the pattern of the pewter, and you get some pixelation in there, but a lot of times you'll actually still get a lot of pattern breaking through from the pewter. And you can actually take it one more step and add calico to the mix to get the cinnamon Oreo blizzard. And this is what a calico looks like. Take a look at this. And the calico, when I first started in ball pythons, I was a little bit confused about the calico. I thought the calico was mainly the gene that brings up the white on the sides of the snake. And I actually produced quite a few calicos here in my collection, and I'm finding out a new side to calico. A lot of times the calico will actually bring in a lot of your reddish brown color. As a matter of fact, I actually took calico, worked it into pinstripe, and I got this really beautiful dark golden, like a reddish gold pinstripe with no white in it. It was pretty amazing. Sometimes you can actually bring almost like a dark side to the calico, mixing it in with some combinations. And sometimes you can actually take the calico, mix it in with bamboo, like the snake that I had around my neck at the beginning of the video. That's Bobby. He is a bamboo. And let me tell you, when you work bamboo and calico together, you get really high white sides. It's kind of an interesting combination. And a lot of times with the calico, I'd say pretty much the telltale sign that you have calico is a lot of times you'll have these open alien heads. They'll kind of all blend together on the side and streak out. You actually look at this, you look at the white on the side, and you look kind of a darkish color. You can definitely tell you have a calico. And here's what happens if you take the calico and you work it in with the pewter. Take a look at this. This is kind of interesting. The calico also disrupts the pattern of the pewter, and a lot of times you'll actually get some pixelation, and sometimes it'll almost completely break up the pattern, and sometimes you'll actually have quite a bit of pattern still coming through the snake. But here's an interesting thing. If you actually take the calico and the yellow belly and work it into the pewter, you actually, most of the times, you completely get rid of almost all of the pattern on the cinnamon Oreo blizzard. And a lot of times people actually put paradox because there's a little bit of paradoxing coming through the snake. And I think what the paradoxing is on the cinnamon Oreo blizzard, what I think that actually is, I think that is the pewter breaking through, because the pewter is really visually dominant, and a lot of times it'll actually break through a lot of your combinations. And for whatever reason, when you mix together the yellow belly and the calico, it completely dominates the pewter. But a lot of times you'll actually get the pewter trying to break through in a little spots. I think that is where the paradoxing is coming in. All right, so what is time for the question of the day? And Chris Blocker asks, has anyone ever tried to breed a male maker to a female maker, and would they cancel each other out? And that is a very good question. As a matter of fact, when I first started in ball pythons, I was wondering the same exact thing. So when we're talking about male makers and female makers, essentially we're talking about two genes, the banana and the coral glow. And I'm convinced the banana and the coral glow is the same gene. A lot of people actually separate them into two different lines of pretty much the same thing. And those are the only two genes in all ball pythons pythons where you'll have male makers and female makers. So if you actually had a male maker banana, you bred it to something else, half the offspring would come out as bananas, and all the banana offspring would be all males. It's kind of one of the frustrating parts of the project. I actually have corglows and bananas here in my collection, and both of them are male makers, and I've never produced a female banana or corglow. And kind of on the flip side, if you actually had a female maker, you breed that to something else, half the offspring come out as bananas, and all those bananas would be female. But here is the catch where you actually can't breed a male maker to a female maker, because the male makers and female makers are only associated with the males. So if you actually took a female banana and bred it to something else, half the offspring would come out as bananas, but they'd be split 50-50. You get half males and half females. So in order to breed a male maker to a female maker, essentially what you'd have to do is you'd have to breed two males together, which is essentially impossible. So that is pretty much it. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.